Captain Marcus Chun had seen many strange things during his 15 years aboard deep space exploration vessels, but nothing quite prepared him for the scene that greeted him in the abandoned research station orbiting Kepler 442b. The facility had gone dark 3 weeks ago. No distress signals, no final transmissions, just silence from what had been one of the Galactic Council's most promising xenobiology research outposts. When Marcus and his small crew arrived to investigate, they expected to find equipment failures, maybe evidence of a pirate raid. They didn't expect to find a nursery. The research station's main laboratory had been converted into what could only be described as a makeshift daycare center. Soft padding covered the walls, feeding apparatus lined the counters, and in the center of it all sat a small, dark creature, no bigger than a human toddler. "By the void," whispered Dr. Sarah Kim, the mission xenobiologist, as she consulted her scanner. "Marcus, these readings." "This is a Vorthic youngling." Marcus felt his blood run cold. The Vorthic were the stuff of nightmares across the galaxy apex. Predators from the Andromeda sector whose adult form stood 3 meters tall, possessed retractable claws that could slice through titanium, and had never been known to show mercy to any sentient species they encountered. They were the reason entire star systems had evacuation protocols. How is that possible? Marcus asked, studying the small creature. It looked almost innocent. Large, luminous eyes regarded him with curiosity rather than malice. Its claws were barely visible nubs, and it made soft, chittering sounds that seemed more like questions than threats. Dr. Kim's scanner beat frantically. The research team was studying Vorthic reproduction cycles. "Look at this," she pointed to a datapad left behind by the station's former occupants. They discovered that Vorthic young imprint on the first sentient being they encountered after hatching. The researchers were trying to understand if this could lead to peaceful coexistence. "And then?" Marcus prompted, though he suspected he knew the answer. Emergency evacuation order came down from the council. All xenobiology research on hostile species was suspended immediately. Sarah's voice carried a note of disgust. "They just left it here." The youngling, it couldn't be more than a few days old, based on the research notes, had been abandoned by researchers, who fled in panic when their funding was cut. Marcus looked down at the creature, which had somehow managed to toddle over to his feet and was now looking up at him with those impossibly large eyes. "Da?" the youngling chirped, its translator collar rendering the sound in Standard Galactic. "Common." Marcus nearly jumped out of his skin. "Did it just—" "First word acquisition," Sarah breathed, consulting her scanner again. "Marcus, it's imprinted on you. In its neural development, you're registering as its primary caregiver." "Absolutely not," Marcus said firmly, backing away. "We're not taking a baby Vorthic onto my ship. Do you know what the council would do if they found out? What happens when this thing grows up and decides we look tasty?" But the youngling followed. Him, tiny claws clicking on the metal flooring. "Gotta," it said more insistently. Reaching up with stubby arms, Sarah knelt beside the creature, running her scanner over it once more. "Marcus, look at these neural patterns. Its brain structure is developing completely differently from wild Vorthic. The imprinting process isn't just behavioral, it's actually altering its fundamental neural pathways." "You're saying what? Exactly?" "I'm saying this little one might never develop the aggressive tendencies of its species. The research notes suggest that Vorthic young are essentially blank slates. They become what their environment shapes them to be." Marcus stared down at the youngling, which had managed to grab onto his boot and was now hugging it with surprising gentleness. Despite himself, he felt something twist in his chest. He'd always wanted children, but a life spent jumping between star systems had never allowed for it. "The council will never approve this," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The council doesn't have to know," Sarah replied quietly. "Not yet, anyway. We're a research vessel. We can study its development, prove that Vorthic can be peaceful under the right circumstances. And if we're wrong, if it grows up and kills us all, Sarah gestured to her readings. Then we'll have died advancing scientific knowledge. But Marcus, look at it. Does this seem like a monster to you? The youngling had given up on his boot and was now exploring the laboratory with careful, measured steps. When it encountered a sharp edge on a counter, it instinctively pulled back. When it found a soft cloth, it rubbed against it contentedly. Its movements were curious but cautious, exploratory but never destructive. "Got up?" it asked, looking back at Marcus with what could only be described as trust. Against every regulation in the Galactic Council handbook, against every instinct. Screaming that this was dangerous beyond measure, Marcus found himself reaching down to pick up the youngling. It settled into his arms with a contented purr, its small body warm and surprisingly light. "We'll need to modify the ship's environmental controls," he heard himself saying. "And we'll need to file a lot of very creative paperwork." Sarah grinned. "I'll start working on the habitat modifications. What are you going to call him?" Marcus looked down at the small creature, which had fallen asleep in his arms with complete trust. He thought about all the reports he'd read about Vorthic attacks, about entire colonies evacuated in terror, about the reputation of these beings as unstoppable. Killing machines. "Zephyr," he said finally. "His name is Zephyr." 6 months later, as Marcus watched Zephyr carefully help Dr. Kim organize her specimen samples, using those same claws that should have been weapons to gently move delicate equipment, he realized that the greatest discoveries often came from the most unexpected places. The galaxy might not be ready to accept that predators could become protectors, that monsters could become family. But as Zephyr looked up at him with eyes full of love and called him Dad in perfect galactic common, Marcus knew they'd have time to change minds. After all, the best revolutions started small.